When we look back at American history, some stories are told over and over again. But some of the most powerful ones, well, they're like hidden embers, just waiting for someone to come along and breathe life back into them. Today, we're going to talk about a true pioneer, a woman who found her voice when pretty much everyone was trying to keep her silent. Maria W. Stewart.
So, let me just start by asking you a question. Who do you think was the very first American woman to get up in front of a crowd of both men and women and talk about politics? Now, if you're thinking of someone from the women's suffrage movement, you're on the right track, but you're about a century too late.
Let's set the scene. The year is 1832. To put that in perspective, women in America wouldn't get the right to vote for another 90 years. Back then, the idea of a woman speaking in public at all, it wasn't just weird, it was seen as completely scandalous. And the person who shattered that barrier, it was a free black woman named Maria W. Stewart. She was a writer, a teacher, an activist, and someone who got up on stage and, honestly, helped change the course of history.
So you have to wonder, where did she get that kind of courage? Well, her strength, as it turns out, was really forged in hardship, right from the very beginning. To get who the activist was, we first have to understand the orphan.
Maria was born a free person in Connecticut in 1803, but her life got tough fast. By the time she was just 5 years old, she was an orphan. She became an indentured servant, and that meant no formal schooling. But Maria, she basically stole an education for herself, sneaking books from the minister's library to teach herself how to read. Then, tragedy hits again. Her husband dies, and she's cheated out of the inheritance he left her by white businessmen. And that was it. That was the last straw. For her, these weren't just sad events. They were deep injustices that lit a fire in her that would burn for the rest of her life.
So with this righteous anger and her deep faith, Maria Stewart just knew she couldn't be quiet. And long before she ever set foot on a podium, she picked up a pen.
She was so inspired by abolitionists like David Walker that she started writing with this incredible urgency. Her essays were so good, so powerful, that the famous publisher William Lloyd Garrison started printing them in his hugely influential anti-slavery newspaper, The Liberator. I mean, think about that. All of a sudden, her ideas about justice and abolition had a massive platform, reaching people all over the North. And just listen to her words here. With this one question, you can see exactly what made her message so unique. See, Stewart wasn't just talking about slavery in some abstract way. She was speaking directly to and for black women. She was making the case that their brilliant minds and their incredible talents were being completely wasted.
And this is where her argument gets so incredibly smart. When she spoke to people in the North, she did not let them feel comfortable. She told them, look, the South has the physical chains of slavery, sure, but you, here in the North, you have your own societal chains of racism. You're locking free black people out of good jobs and real opportunities, and that is its own kind of injustice.
For Stewart, who had to fight for every single word she ever learned to read, the worst chains of all were the chains of ignorance. This was personal for her. She knew firsthand that education was the real key to freedom. It was the one thing that could truly liberate a person's mind. But as you can probably guess, when you're the first one to do something, it's not easy. Being a woman, and a black woman, speaking so publicly and so politically, well, she was breaking all the rules of her time. Okay, so to really get how brave she was, you have to understand this term. Back in the 1830s, a crowd with both men and women in it was called a promiscuous audience. And for a woman to speak in front of a group like that, it was considered absolutely shocking. It just wasn't done.
And the criticism she faced was brutal. People weren't just mad about her radical ideas. For a lot of them, the real problem was her, a black woman standing on a stage, speaking with an authority that they believed she had absolutely no right to.
In all that pressure, it just became too much to bear. So after only 3 years, in 1833, she gave her farewell address in Boston. She stepped down from the lecture circuit, but she was nowhere near done with her work. See, leaving the podium wasn't giving up for her. It was a strategic move. She just took all that passion and fire for change and channeled it into a new fight, education. And her mission took her all over. She moved to New York and became a teacher. Then she went to Baltimore. Later, she's in Washington, D.C., where she actually founds her own school for children who'd escaped the horrors of slavery. She became so well respected that she was eventually named the head matron at the Freedmen's Hospital, a job that the legendary Sojourner Truth had once held. How amazing is that? So when you step back and look at it all, her legacy is just this incredible list of firsts.
The very first American woman to speak to men and women about politics. The first African-American woman to lecture on women's rights. The first to publicly demand an end to slavery. She wasn't just talking, she was blazing a trail for countless others to follow.
So we'll end with her own words, a call to action that feels just as powerful today as it did back then. Maria W. Stewart's voice was a fire, and it's one that just refused to go out. Her story really leaves us with a question, not just about the past, but about right now. What barriers are we willing to break to stand up for what's right?